Mantis is none other than this affluent African-American man who happened to seize the opportunity when it was most needed. When he was shot in the spine during the riot, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Eventually, he found himself in the right place when he came across an exoskeleton that allowed him to walk and permanently reduce his paralysis. It turned out to be a blessing in disguise because Hawkins' superhuman abilities from the exoskeleton allowed him to act as the city's Mantis vigilante because of his morality and good conscience. This show portrays Mantis in all its glory, from his journey of becoming one, to his team's formation, how he gathered courage, how he ended up having an underwater base and a hovercraft, his battles with the paranormal, his encounters with time travel, and his untimely and unfortunate death at the hands of an invisible dinosaur. The first male African-American hero on television has been introduced by the writer-producer team of Batman and Spider-Man through the character Mantis. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. The creation of the Mantis TV series 1994 to 1995. In 1994, the television series Mantis debuted. It's an American superhero show that aired on television for just one season and introduced black superheroes to the network for the first time. Fox Network was the original broadcaster of the show, with Renaissance Pictures / Universal Television and Wilberforce Productions as producing companies. Produced in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. On the other hand, Los Angeles was the location of the television show's pilot episode. The 2-hour episode was created in association with Sam Hamm and Sam Raimi. The Spider-Man and Batman film series are also linked to the writer-producer team. There were 22 episodes in the television series. Basic scenes, costumes, location, and design of the pilot were all very different from those of the series. Regarding the Vancouver setting, the show featured a number of notable landmarks. The Dome of Science World and CN railcars crossing railroad tracks are just a couple of the noteworthy examples. An African-American superhero is portrayed in the show, which was quite novel for the 1990s. The plot of the show centers on a doctor named Hawkins who gets caught up in a riot and is shot in the spine, which renders him paralyzed from the waist down. The doctor turned to a self-made and developed exoskeleton that allowed him to walk and gave him supernatural abilities after becoming weary of chasing after governmental and legal resources and his fruitless attempts to obtain justice for himself. With his fully bulletproof black body armor, he is able to shoot non-lethal paralysis darts from his wrists, increasing his strength, speed, and agility. He transforms into a vigilante wearing a metal mask known as M.A.N.T.I.S, mechanically augmented neurotransmitter interception system to be exact, which was later renamed the Mechanically Augmented Neurotransmitter Interactive System for the television series. However, the program only lasted for one season, with its 22 episodes spread over 3 years, ending with the final episode airing in 1997. The television series' main cast was the main cause of the protracted and hectic shooting period. Carl Lumbly, who was concurrently filming for Night John, played the role of Mr. Hawkins, which caused the show to run far longer than planned. Although the show has been somewhat forgotten on television, it's still worth grabbing on DVD thanks to its recent release. For those who are looking for HD shows and videos with excellent quality, this might not be the best option. Following the tragic incident that Hawkins faced, the show shows him getting back on track with his best friend John Stonebreak, played by Roger Rees. Along with the two of them is a young career named Taylor Savage, played by Christopher Garton, a police detective who happens to be quite attractive, and Lieutenant Leora Maxwell, played by the stunning Galen George. Hawkins has the Sea-Pod, a large underwater laboratory, and the Chrysalis, a hovercraft for flying around the city. Because he doesn't want to kill the bad guys, he also has these immobilizing drugs. Hints of action, drama, adventure, and everything else can be found in the show. It veers slightly away from its default sci-fi genre and towards the portrayal of drama. Throughout the show, Hawkins first adjusts to his disability and isn't shown as a victim, which is quite commendable. However, he has fully accepted his condition and is looking forward to taking on the Mantis as his next challenge. It's interesting to note that he and his friend occasionally disagreed about how the exoskeleton should be used because it allowed the characters to feel unique and like they belonged. The show demonstrates a balancing act between a person's level of affection and the greater good. Speaking of the contrasts between the first episode and the remainder of the run, the primary feature of the show, the exoskeleton, had a distinct appearance after the pilot, which was pretty shocking. Hawkins wore a brown leather trench coat and an elegant suit over his exoskeleton in the pilot episode, but the trench coat was missing its skull cap. He had the same exact head, bare hair, and a larger mask or headpiece with unique glowing green lenses that can hypnotize anyone who looked into his eyes. Both this ability and his custom of leaving a small metal mantis behind as a calling card were eliminated from the later series. After the pilot episode, the program completely changes with an odd background commentary about African Americans' oppression that airs constantly. The show's lightheartedness and supporting cast members were also genuinely altered. All the characters except Miles Hawkins were recast, and the location was shifted from Oceania City to Port Columbia. The show starts off with Mantis, a vigilante who deals with minor offenses in the city like robberies and other crimes. But as the series went on and more episodes were produced, Mantis found himself embroiled in a number of legitimate science fiction crimes. We get to see time travel, dimensions, telepathy, mind control, ancient druids, and even a dinosaur in addition to supervillains. Viewers prefer Mantis' realistic approach to crime solving over the show's heavily integrated and fantastical science fiction sequences, as evidenced by the show's oomph and ratings. The directors decided to include Hawkins' death in the finale, which is somewhat dramatic and unexpected given the direction the show is taking. Between the early episodes where music is directed by Christopher Frank and the later ones where Randy Miller is in charge of music, there is a clear difference in taste. The show's difficult to watch and occasionally jumbled plot may have been a major contributing factor to its cancellation. Nevertheless, the show's humorous moments are superior to most comedic scenes on television, so that alone could make it worthwhile to watch. Exploring the initial episodes and climactic finale of Mantis. Under Eric Lanaville's direction, Sam Raimi and Sam Hamm created the Mantis pilot episode. Carl Lumley, an African-American man, was the episode's main cast member, and he dealt with gang violence and racial tensions. His interactions with Gina Torres and Bobby Hosea, a medical examiner and a reporter, respectively, who were initially assigned to look into the background of Mantis, ultimately led to him becoming teammates and concealing his alter ego from the public. We find out that the real person behind the Mantis facet is Dr. Miles Hawkins after the episode is aired to the halfway point. He was able to walk again after making this discovery, which put an end to his disability. However, the entire ordeal may end up costing him dearly in the long run. He suffered a severe injury during the Los Angeles riots when a police officer shot him in the waist, paralyzing and crippling him. When he is not Mantis, he wears a mask to avoid drawing too much attention from others. He is also extremely wealthy, but when he is not wearing the mask, his social conscience is fully activated. The way the show develops at first leads us to acknowledge Mantis, but not in a positive way. Although there are theories that Miles Hawkins, the character in the show, was named after Stephen Hawking, this is only a theory as opposed to the fact that he was named after jazz musicians because he loved jazz music. Dennis Cohen, one of the founders of Milestone, was in charge of creating and putting together the character's outfit, which served as the main character in the television series Mantis. Following the 2-hour pilot episode, the stakes were raised. Everything changed drastically with the exception of Carl Lumley, the show's main character. Now, the show's plot didn't really center on racial distinctions or winning over racial politics. As the show went on, it began to feature a more diverse cast and became lighter in tone. In the second episode, Miles leads a company named Hawkins Technologies alongside his closest friend, John Stonebreak. They had successfully created Miles' exoskeleton, which allowed him to walk around without paralysis. The exoskeleton was mentioned in the pilot episode, but only in reference to a harness. To clarify, Miles was the one who developed the exoskeleton for walking, and John was the one who made the control helmet. Over time, the two closest friends realized that the control helmet and the exoskeleton were a perfect match. This helmet could allow for the flying of cars, the chrysalid, and other things. This episode marked a change from the pilot episode in that the helmet was now required for the exoskeleton to operate. A few design changes were made to the helmet. The character in the series wore a molded black bodysuit over the bare exoskeleton, while the pilot version wore a suit, tie, and trench coat over the harness. All in all, Mantis was not a very good superhero. He wasn't very good at saving lives. In episode 2, he attempted to foil a paramilitary raid on an arms warehouse, but was only able to save Savage's life in the end. Not that he was very good at hiding his identity either. In the same episode's climactic scene, the Mantis made fun of the main villain by using the same line that the villain had used to make fun of Miles Hawkins. And he had a history of leaving a scene the instant he heard police sirens approaching to see if there was still an innocent person in danger. An invisible dinosaur kills the main character and his love interest, Miles Hawkins, and Lieutenant Maxwell in a very depressing episode that closes the show. Miles and Leora are trapped in their car by the invisible dinosaur as the episode comes to a close. In an attempt to electrocute the dinosaur, Miles sets off a fuel cell. The ensuing explosion kills both Leora and Miles. There was no turning back after they passed away in finality. At the very pinnacle and climax of the show, Hawkins makes a poor choice that prevents him from saving his love interest, which is another reason he failed to save her. John, on the other hand, disables Mantis' technology and records in order to avert a future apocalypse. Even though Mantis died in reality, his 32-year time travel also sent him to an unidentified location in the future. A deep dive into the major cast. Dr. Miles Hawkins. This role was portrayed by Carl Lumley. He starred in 22 episodes of the show, starting from the very first to the very last. The television series M.A.N.T.I.S was delayed in its filming due to his busy schedule and absences. He was filming Night John when he left this show. Dr. Miles was a wealthy man who was tragically rendered paralyzed from the waist down after being shot during a riot. Because of his courage, strength, and dedication to justice, he joined the city's vigilante group, M.A.N.T.I.S. He was a competent member of the team who loved and respected who he was. His unwavering determination to persevere through the most trying circumstances is admirable. To tell the truth, he was very charismatic in his approach, and his aura stuck with me. Although he is courteous and calm, there is a fierceness to him, and he would not back down when he was M.A.N.T.I.S. His eyes would constantly flash with anger. His attitude and the way he owns and embraces himself, understanding that he is the M.A.N.T.I.S and the protagonist of this story, never failed to chill the audience. Having an African-American disabled person in the lead role of a television show written by the writer of Batman and Spider-Man is actually a smart idea. John Stonebrick. On the television series M.A.N.T.I.S, Roger Rees plays the scientist and closest friend of Mr. Hawkins. He also suffered through the entire run of the show. He was co-head of Hawkins Technologies with Miles Hawkins. He has a significant role in the M.A.N.T.I.S character's growth. Although he was the one who designed the organization's peri-materia control helmet, their minds were able to connect the helmet to the exoskeleton, which allowed them to utilize it to its fullest capacity. He also had a strong sense of self, and he would take his opinions seriously and speak them out, even on topics where he and Miles didn't agree. His ongoing battle to help his best friend and save him while also encouraging him to act for the greater good is a compelling plot point that highlights the contradictions in human nature. His creative bent and aptitude for science helped shape him into the man he became. Taylor Savage. Christopher Garton portrayed this character on television. He belonged to the M.A.N.T.I.S team as the third member. Undoubtedly, his youthful appearance and charisma added a new dimension to the show. Still, there were a few moments when his presence seemed a little forced. He was the one who gave Miles Hawkins the moniker Mantis for his alter ego, which was inspired by his mask-like appearance. However, the timing of his suggestion was peculiar because the original moniker from the pilot episode did show up on screen in later episodes of the show. He was also there when Miles made his first attempt to use the exoskeleton to help someone, and he skillfully talked himself into becoming an integral part of the team and an operator. Lieutenant Maxwell. Galen George portrayed this character. She appeared in the television series M.A.N.T.I.S as a police detective. It appears that she was looking into the background and history of M.A.N.T.I.S and Dr. Miles Hawkins. She ended up falling in love with Miles in the show, which was an intriguing twist given her character and plot. Despite her professional agendas, they shared a few intimate scenes in the show, but that's just how shows work. It was terrible to witness her passing in the show, particularly at the hands of the man she cherished. M.A.N.T.I.S made a poor decision that ultimately led to her death. It was an awful choice and an example of a protagonist failing. Is it a worth-watching series? All things considered, the show is entertaining and worth seeing. It would be unwise to skip the show because there is so much to see in terms of new agenda items, themes, and screen displays. I mean, this show's concept, plot, storyline, and characters have all been expertly chosen. Even though it was only on for one season, and that too for 3 long years, the audiences adored it. Everyone has watched it through to the very end and enjoyed it. Of course, everyone has their favorites and points of contention when contrasting the 2 seasons or the pilot episode with the remaining episodes. But that's true of all motion pictures and television shows as well. For this one, that isn't really the case. The show's finale is regrettable, depressing, and heartbreaking since it shows us how quickly our protagonist and his beloved love interest pass away. It's shocking and difficult to process, but the show was reaching its climax, which made the process a little easier. In relation to Mantis, he was a real character. He was a good package all around. He was handsome, tough, ambitious, cherry, charming, and funny. We adored him both in his on-screen persona and as the Mantis. It's a bold and fascinating show to watch. Appealing looks and charisma, Carl Lumbly and Gina Torres are two compelling characters to watch. The program occasionally experienced financial problems, which were evident in the episodes where there was a shortage. It was awful, especially the last episode and the whole dinosaur thing. The television show's pilot episode was significantly superior to its first half, and its second half was merely passable when viewed in totality. But each episode was good in its own unique way, every now and then. The graph didn't show much of a sharp decline, but the ratings did start to decline after the 11th and 12th episodes. The time travel concept, gadgets, knockout actions, and extremely natural elements combined to create an exciting show with enjoyable elements. Even though the stories were complex, the audience was captivated and kept interested all the way through. The entire show is open-ended, and everyone is welcome to participate in the interpretations. It might be a fantastic watch for some people, and a mediocre watch for others. Everything is dependent on viewpoints. Nevertheless, the show isn't as good as the Marvel films or shows to please every viewer. However, it is excellent enough to satisfy and delight the target audience. The television series credits for Sam Hamm and Sam Raimi undoubtedly flourish and highlight viewers' admiration and excitement for the works. The characters and storyline of the show were entirely original. It was unlike anything we had seen on screen up until this point. Some science fiction fans found the show to be a thrilling watch, while others thought it would make a good sitcom. There aren't any films or television shows that feature disabled heroes, so it's not exactly common. The show's creators are pretty quirky and clever for introducing such a concept and seeing it through to completion. Even if you don't want to binge watch everything, you should still watch the thrilling episode Gloves Off, which explores the real Mantis. It's impressive that Hawkins possesses the dual ability to completely transform himself by simply donning an exoskeleton. It gives him the opportunity to save the world and satisfies his inner desire to wake up once more. What more could a person ask for? Being a hero, if only temporarily? It evokes feelings of contentment, joy, and passion. Even though he wasn't always a hero, he was still a real hero because of his willingness to try, his perseverance, and his repeated trials. Marvelous verdict. Mantis was an original and distinctive concept for a show. Given the time it aired and the talented writers and producers behind it, the crew did a fantastic job curating this show. There are undoubtedly some drawbacks to the show, but there are also many advantages. It was pretty amazing and shocking to the audience to hear about the idea of featuring an African American hero on television in the 1990s. The combination of drama and science fiction in one program gave viewers a satisfying sitcom. The show presented the protagonist as a good character with an unbreakable spirit, self-assurance, and a social conscience to uplift society. He was a true gem of a man, giving of himself completely, but his valiant strategies needed a lot of honing and were not that sharp. Throughout the entire episode, there were numerous times when we saw Hawkins exhibit a reckless personality and fail to consistently prevail in the battles he boldly faced. To be honest, his last deal, not being able to save his love interest Leora, was a very tragic event. She was worthy of better. The woman chose to be with a guy over her career, specifically the investigation, but because of Mr. Miles Hawkins' poor choices, they ultimately faced an untimely end. When it came to his friendship with John Stonebreak, he was a good friend because John always showed concern for Hawkins, which is a positive sign of friendship. He showed Hawkins empathy as well as concern. That is a scene in the show that is truly admirable. Even so, Mantis and Carl Lumbly's demeanor, display of honor, and manly strength prevail, making it a worthwhile watch at any time. All considered, it is recommended that you watch the show's better episodes. If interest wanes over time, the bad ones can be skipped. A single viewing of the show as a casual sitcom should be sufficient. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.